Good evening from New York. This is Thursday, September 29th, 404 days until the 2012 presidential election. Suddenly, Occupy Wall Street is Occupy Wall Street with the help of two powerful unions. Actually, make that 3, 4, possibly 5. First, the Airline Pilots Association associated itself with the movement last night. Now, the New York City transit workers have signed up to join the protests tomorrow. Add in the United Federations of Teachers, the SEIU, and next, perhaps, the United Auto Workers. The fifth story on the countdown, this while the pepper spraying incidents at Occupy Wall Street will prove to occupy some of the time of the Manhattan District Attorney. The union's first. Transit Workers Union Local 100 alone has 38,000 active members and another 26,000 retirees. Spokesman Jim Gannon says it's kind of a natural alliance with the young people and the students. They are voicing our message. Why not join them? While the auto workers connection is at this point just a murmur we heard, according to New York's Village Voice, exuberant TWU worker Christine Williams was already on the scene last night.
The people have finally woke up, and we're here, and we're staying, and we're not going anywhere.
And while New York was hit by a brief but intense storm this afternoon, celebrities continue to turn up at Manhattan's Zuccotti Park to show their support, including the Princeton University professor, author, and commentator Dr. Cornel West.
They are taking a stand for justice in the face of the greed of Wall Street. They're standing for the best of America. They're concerned about poor children. They're concerned about working people. They're concerned about people of color.
And New York District Attorney Cyrus Vance, the district attorney for New York County, that is, also concerned with Saturday's incident that saw NYPD Deputy Inspector Anthony Bologna spray pepper gas on 4 protesters already confined in a plastic police pen, to say nothing of a second incident involving the same officer and the same caustic chemical. Vance's communications director, Aaron Duggan, saying the district attorney's office takes all allegations of police misconduct seriously. The NYPD and New York Civilian Complaint Control Board had already announced their own investigations after seeing the video we just showed and this second video that came out yesterday that also showed Officer Bologna firing pepper spray at another group that included a photographer named Andrew Hinderaker. Hinderaker was wearing a press pass at the time he was hit. He told the New York Times he also saw police grab a woman protester from behind a barrier and throw her on the street. After taking pictures, he walked away, only to encounter Bologna. Seconds later, the photographer said, "I felt something wet on my hand and my face. It started to burn." The head of another union, the NYPD's Captains Endowment Association, insists Bologna's actions were limited and they restored order and were motivated by his concern for the officers under his command and by public safety. The videos documenting Bologna's conduct suggest otherwise. While the protesters suggest they may be around for a while. Asked how long Occupy Wall Street will be active in New York, protester Shun Botato said indefinitely until change is made to the financial structure. Given that the inequity that he's talking about predates J.P. Morgan and the Gould Fisk attempt to corner the gold market and Diamond Jim Brady eating 3 steaks at a time at Delmonico's, it could be a very long time indeed. For more on the story, the investigation, and on the impact that Occupy Wall Street's having on New York City, I'm joined by Errol Lewis, the political anchor with the New York One News and the host of one of the finest local news programs in the country, Inside City Hall, and co-author now of Deadline Artists. Pleasure to see you, sir.
Great to see you.
The Cyrus Vance Jr. investigation as Manhattan, New York County DA of the pepper spraying. Is it typical, atypical? What's the context of it?
It's a little unusual, but then again, this is a pretty unusual event. Yeah. I mean, we were talking around the newsroom. Nobody in their memory could remember when a white shirt, a command officer, command-level officer, and my dad was a cop, actually retired as an inspector. They don't go out and do stuff that ends up on tape that looks like that. They're supposed to be there to be looking out over the shoulders of everybody else and make sure that they don't get out of line and that things don't get out of hand. So this investigation is serious. It would have to be taken seriously. It's not a run-of-the-mill case. It's gotten a lot of attention. These viral videos, they do make an impact. I mean, every prosecutor, including Vance, would say, no, this is the dispassionate, neutral administration of justice. But the reality is you get 400, 500, 600 complaints. You get press inquiries from all over the world. It's time to assign somebody above the level of intern to look into the case.
Like the case several years ago where the protester who was clotheslined by the guy, by the officer, the bicycle incident. There was video of it, and it was very compelling.
And that was a rookie. He was still on probation, and he lost his job.
Though.
This is way different.
And do you have even speculation as to why this senior officer would have been involved in this under those circumstances?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, knowing some people, including family members. I mean, they get into it. They remain cops, even if they're bosses, and they see something they don't like, they want to take action. That's very much the sort of the profession calls for it, and that's the spirit of the department. I think there may have been, if I were to speculate, sort of a misunderstanding, because when you do protests, and the police cover protests all the time in this town, and labor protests.
1 an hour.
Yeah, and it's usually organized, and it's usually choreographed.
Right.
You tell them, we're going to march over here, this number of people are going to get arrested, and then we're going to go back to where we started from, and so forth. It looked like this was sort of a wildcat action. It looks like, and the cops say over and over again, we didn't know that they were going to go to Union Square. We didn't know they weren't going to stay on the sidewalk like we asked them to. And that apparently is where all of the trouble began.
Well, having had family members in my family who are both cops and protesters, I know that's the original idea of the protest. You don't get the permit, you just protest, and whatever happens, happens.
Here's a little secret. Al Sharpton, who's led dozens, if not hundreds of marches in this town, he says it in his book, so I'm not telling any secrets, but most people don't know this, never gets a permit. Just does what he does.
Just go.
Yeah.
Speaking of permits and choreography, the NYPD investigation, the Civilian Complaint Board, do these things have any teeth, or does the NYPD, with this newly revealed capacity it has to shoot planes out of the sky, does it pretty much run this town now?
The NYPD does run this town to this extent. The Civilian Complaint Review Board, although it's been beefed up, although it, for the first time over the last decade, is really all civilians now, it really doesn't have the kind of clout or the number of investigators needed to really go in. On the other hand, they also said the Internal Affairs Bureau is looking at this, and they do have power.
Right.
And they do have clout. And to the extent that the district attorney is looking, they have all the power in the world. I mean, they have prosecuted cops, not successfully in recent times on some high-profile cases, but they can indict you. They can send you to prison if they get a conviction. You
read this city very well. Are you surprised that after 10 days of barely moving the proverbial needle that the Occupy Wall Street group got some traction? Because usually you get about 12 hours, and if you haven't made a mark, you're out.
This is true. I think they got, and I've seen at least one article suggesting this, they got a boost from the NYPD, frankly. Yep. I mean, they were being ignored. That pepper spray incident and the video that came from it has gotten them on the front page in newspapers all over the world. So maybe it was calculated, maybe it was luck, maybe it was foolishness on the part of the NYPD, but they're onto something that maybe they weren't going to be onto.
And now the involvement of the unions, that's a direct product of the attention, you suppose? It wasn't going to happen otherwise?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, some of the unions that you ticked off, I mean, TWU Local 100, they went on strike in violation of state law and shut down this city a few years ago. So they've always been. That's very much their tradition. SEIU has also been one of the more militant unions.
Certainly.
So these are sort of the ones that you could expect. Now, if you start seeing some of the trade unions, the construction trades, and some others come out, that would be big news. I don't know if this is them, sort of throwing a little bit of a half-hearted lifeline there, but this is all taking place just a stone's throw from the United Federation of Teachers, one of the most powerful unions in the state. Their headquarters is right down there.
If they get started, then we're halfway to the communal. Errol Lewis, political anchor at New York One News and the host of Inside City Hall, co-author of Deadline Artists. Again, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
With labor unions and progressive organizations now joining Occupy Wall Street and similar Occupy protests planned around the country, the possibility exists that together they might be synthesizing something this country seemingly has not had in decades, an active, motivated left coalition to counter the right wing. I'm joined now by one of the leading progressive voices on Capitol Hill, Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent of Vermont. Senator, thanks again for your time tonight.
My pleasure.
That's what is happening here? Dare I say this? An American left is forming?
Well, I certainly hope so. The middle class is collapsing in America today. Poverty is increasing, and institutions like Wall Street have enormous power over our economy and political life. So we desperately need a coming together of working people to stand up to Wall Street. Corporate Americans say enough is enough. We need to rebuild the middle class in this country, and you guys can't have it all.
How long do you think it's been since we've had an active, viable left, even one comparable to the right? Is it Reagan, pre-Reagan? Is it Vietnam era?
It's been a very, very long time, Keith. There's no question about that. But what I appreciate about what's going on in New York City right now is there is a spotlight being focused on Wall Street. We desperately need that. If we're going to get out of this recession, if we're going to create the millions of jobs that we desperately need, we need real Wall Street reform. I mean, right now, a lot of people don't know this. You have 6 financial institutions, the largest 6 banks in the country, who control 60% of the assets of the United States of America. After we bailed them out because they were too big to fail, 3 out of the 4 largest financial institutions actually became bigger. So if we are going to create a situation where capital is going to flow into the productive economy, into manufacturing, into rebuilding our infrastructure, into transforming our energy system, rather than continuing the casino-type games that Wall Street is playing right now, we need a lot of pressure on Wall Street. No question about that.
So give me your read in that context about Occupy Wall Street. I mean, I have always had a theory that nothing has ever changed for the better in the history of this world without somebody starting by saying, hey, this is wrong. I don't know how to fix it, but this is wrong, and we just need to keep saying this is wrong until everybody's saying, well, okay, let's get together and fix it.
Absolutely. And focusing attention on Wall Street is exactly the right thing to do. Let me give you just one other example, Keith. As in the Dodd-Frank financial reform bill, we managed to get a provision in there which allowed for an audit of the Fed during the Wall Street bailout. What we learned, amazingly enough, is the Fed provided $16 trillion, $16 trillion in low-interest loans to every financial institution in this country and to central banks all over the world and large American corporations. Now, just think about what would happen if the Fed today said, we have to deal with unemployment. We're going to make billions of dollars in low-interest loans available to small businesses, to those institutions in America that are actually part of the productive economy, producing products, producing services, and creating jobs. So I think focusing on Wall Street, ending their speculation, demanding that they participate in the productive economy, helping us create the millions of jobs we desperately need, breaking up these behemoths which are strangling our economy, is exactly the kind of attention that we need to be focusing on.
All right. Well, those folks who've been out there now for more than a week and a half, sometimes I think must feel like they're on the moon. In terms of the media attention, they're beginning to get it. But in terms of people taking it seriously, I'm not sure that the mainstream of the country is yet. You're a respected figure in the United States Senate, which is a rare thing. What would your message be to them directly who are out there right now involved in Occupy Wall Street?
My message is reach out to working people, reach out to the unions, reach out to the middle class, bring people together demanding real Wall Street reform so that the function of Wall Street is to provide capital to the productive economy, create jobs that we desperately need, rather than continue to engage in speculation and casino-type activities, i.e. real Wall Street reform.
Last point. There's an Occupy protest scheduled for the 6th of next month in Washington. Do you welcome them coming to the Capitol? Would you attend? I mean, they've already asked me. I'm sure they'd rather have you.
Any attention that we can pay to the greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior on Wall Street, or to what the Fed is not doing, I think is deserved attention. So I will, see if I can be there, but I think focusing attention on this issue is enormously important.
Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, one of the few people in office to say anything about this subject, and saying it wonderfully as always. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.